Hey everybody, it's Flake for Team Rankstar, and we're all excited about Homecoming. It dropped not too long ago, and everyone's wondering what's some good decks, some easy stuff that we can play. I'll tell you what I played on day one that I was fiddling around with PTR and dropped on day one of Homecoming. It is a Nilfgaard Witcher deck, and I had a lot of fun with it. I'm very happy with this deck, and I thought that maybe you'd like to see how it operates and what it's made of. So I'm going to walk you through it and tell you a little bit about the card choices and why they're so awesome. So let's have at it. All right, so we're kind of knee deep already in Homecoming. A lot of people have been sharing deck lists and exploring with what they want to play with, and what I found is that Nilfgaard has a lot of elements in the game that I really enjoy out of a card game, which is a lot of control, a lot of deck manipulation, and disruption. I'm very much a control player. I've always liked interaction with my decks. I find that, slamming down your points on your board is fine and all, but I like to be able to disrupt my opponent's game plan and while maintaining the course to my own win condition. And I think that this deck here does that very nicely and effectively, right in that sweet spot of provision cost, 165. A great deck that I'm excited to share with you that I've been playing on day one to relative success, actually, and beating all kinds of decks. I've beaten Eridan consistently with this deck, beating great swords and etc. And I want to share it with you. Now, the theme overall with this deck is Witcher. That is the flavor of the deck. I was playing around with PTR and with this deck on PTR, and when Homecoming dropped on the first time, they did tinker a little bit with the provision cost, which allowed me to kind of have to tinker a bit over here and fine tune it to make sure that everything fit. And then I found a nice, real sweet spot with it that I brought onto the ranked yesterday and had some pretty good success with. I don't know what my record was, but I know that I was it was pretty much up there. I was definitely winning a lot more than I was losing with it, and my losses were typically from the fact of just new archetypes and new strategies that I wasn't necessarily familiar with. But I'm going to show this to you, and hopefully you guys get some love out of it and some mileage off of it. Now, number one, we'll just cruise through the gold so I can show you what they are. Number one, no questions asked here. Royal Decree. It's our most expensive card provision-wise. Easy peasy, just grab a unit from your deck. I like that accessibility, because there's a lot of cards that you're going to want to put down that you're going to need in a pinch, and Royal Decree will definitely get you that card, obviously. Now, Vesemir Mentor at 10 provision 4 cost doesn't seem like it's a good trade-off body for provision cost, but obviously this just fits right into our archetype with the theme being Witchers. There's a lot of Witchers in this deck, so you're going to get some value with the one boost. I promise you, this is a card that is an easy peasy, obvious choice. Now, down the road, I've got, let's go down to our 3 Witchers, which is Vesemir, Lambert, Eskel, the trio here. You see a lot of this. It's a neutral card, so it's not necessarily Nilfgaard exclusive, but you're going to want to put this in your deck because it's a slam down of points with some extra thinning involved. Now, you might get screwed on mulligans with this, so be wary of your mulligan and why you want to save mulligans. Use them depending on what you're playing against. This is a great trio that fits in with the synergies of the deck. You'll see these trio in monsters. You'll see it in so many other different factions, but it just fits the flavor, and it's a lot of points once you throw down Vesemir to boost these guys. It's a 15 point play, which is enormous in New Gwent. Down the road, Serret, and of course our buddy Ox. Now, Ox is great. Now, Serret's in there purely to make Ox better, obviously. Serret herself is great. What Serret does, obviously, is she throws down for 5 or 6 points with the boost. Does 3 damage. If Ox is in hand, it does 5. Now, I prefer to use Ox with the boosted ability of Serret in hand for the reason that you want to be locking things with this deck. The 5 damage is great, but lock is typically a better option for you. Now, there's going to be a lot of things. Double Mangonel. There's a lot of cards that will throw down and have engine elements to it. Order cards with Northern Realms or Mangonel with Reveal. Ox is going to shut that down. If you have Serret in hand and Ox, you want to use Ox first because of the fact that the value down the road in locking units is going to be enormous. Death Wish decks, etc. There's a lot of lock. So Ox is going to go down and not only lock the card on the board, but lock the card that's in the deck, in the hand, wherever that may be. So you're getting value down the road with it as well. And a lot of the times opponents won't suspect it or won't see it, see the long-term effect of it. They'll see Ox, they'll see the lock, and then they don't realize the card in their hand is also locked. I've seen that happen to me, and it's brilliant because they'll throw down a card that's already been locked, and then they'll just kind of think and wait. Now, obviously, that's just because some players are new, but Ox, the value doesn't, the value's still there for that. I like Ox for the lock. Serret, the 3 damage for the 5 body, sure, no problem. Now, the other Witcher in here is going to be Ciri Dash. Ciri, after 4 turns, on turn start, draw a card. Make sure you throw her down with 5 cards in hand. So you have 5 cards, her included, you throw her down and you're good to go. Hopefully by then, in round 3, you're getting an extra card, but also your opponent's removal effects, lock effects are already completely exhausted, and you can sort of move forward with Ciri, get some good value out of her, and get an extra card and get last play. Now, last play in this deck can be very, very vital for your win condition, especially if you've already used your Witchers in a previous round, your Eskel, Vesemir, Lambert combo in an earlier round in order to gain tempo or to steal a round or whatnot. So Ciri is going to be important for another win condition, which we'll get to a little bit later. Now, how do you protect these cards? Easy. Avallac'h. Now, Avallac'h's a card that was put onto me by McBeard. I was watching his stream and he was really ranting and raving, rather raving versus ranting, about how great this card was, about the value of the 6 body for only 8 provision and the ability to give a card immune. Now, this has a double edged sword to it because there's two instances where this card is great. Now, besides the fact that the provision to strength ratio is pretty good, the other great part about it is that this card will protect cards that will give you superior advantages down the board. And it's not just a matter of just protecting a card that you don't really care too much about. The immunity is really for your Ciri Dash or the other card, Master Disguise, in order to gain advantage, get extra cards, and really put the game away. Now, 2 great things about this. Number 1 is that this card lives as a 6 body, which means it's out of thunder range and it's out of most range of cards that deal damage. So it's going to have to eat a lock in order to put it out of its misery. But the problem with that is that, the benefit of that is that if this eats a lock, there's one less lock to lock cards like your Ciri Dash or your Master of Disguise, or even shut down some of your other bronzes, worst case. But you're probably going to want to protect more valuable cards. That said, that's kind of doing the job that I wanted to do before, because Avallac'h giving immune to one of your bigger cards like Ciri Dash means that Ciri Dash will not get locked. So if your opponent has 1 lock, obviously you want to protect your Ciri Dash. So if Avallac'h comes down and then the next turn you plan on playing Ciri Dash, if Avallac'h eats that lock, that means that lock is now no longer going to be used on your Ciri Dash. So you're good either way. So I really, really like Avallac'h as an inclusion. It's a very cost-effective card to throw in your deck. Now, obviously, we've seen the Witchers, Ox, etc. Now, Trial of the Grasses is the other kind of spell, quote-unquote, that we put in the deck. Very, very powerful card for 9 provision. Now, oftentimes 9 provision oftentimes you're going to be using this kind of on your own cards because you have so many Witchers. You put it on a 4 strength Waper Witcher. It's an 8.9 provision card, which is a great return. The other thing is there's cards on the other side of the board that are really causing you trouble. You can use it as a 6-point removal, preferably not because you have all kinds of locks ready to go, but in a pinch you can definitely use it. It's quite versatile in that way. The amount of times I've thrown this down to boost my own unit to sort of make a play or steal to steal a round has been tremendous. Now, the other thing is that be careful, Igni, etc. It can put you over the top and really hurt you, but I've had more success than failure with this card for sure. All right, let's move to the bronzes, where we need to get some value. And obviously, any good deck is going to have a lot of powerful cards, but at the same time, you got to balance it out with effective, cheap 4 provision cards. So what do? We throw in some stuff that'll help us out. Now, Magni Division has been an MVP that I've thrown in here. It's a 3 strength, 4 provision card. You throw it in there, and what it does is if alone on a row, it grows by 1 at the end of your turn. Now, early on, it could either eat removal, or it'll sit there and grow and grow and grow and grow. Now, early on, this is probably your first play every time because you're going to probably see 3 cards, which means that it's going to be a 6 for 4. a 6 strength for 4 if it gets unanswered. If it gets answered, fine, you're taking some more removal out of your deck, which would otherwise have, you know, ruined your Master of Disguise, ruined your Siri dash, etc., etc. This is fantastic. So I throw this for this deck, throw it on the ranged row because there's a lot of deploy effects that happen on the melee row. So we'll keep that there. MVP over here, she's grown pretty. The Magni Vision has grown. I've had her up to 11, 12, 13 before in long rounds, and which is essentially the effective strength of your Lambert, Eskel, you know, Vesemir, Witcher combo, which is huge. So another 4 provision throwaway. Oops, we already did that one. Is the Slave Driver. Now, Slave Driver is a deal 2 damage, 4 provision, 2 strength. No problem. It doesn't break the bank. It doesn't do anything too special. It doesn't. You're not killing anything with 2. You might finish something off, but regardless, this card really gets a lot more mileage when you're locking things. Now, this deck has a lot of locks between, your Ox hitting the board and your other locking cards. This is going to do some good stuff. Now, 1 lock on the board, becomes a 5 for 4. 2 locks on the board, it's a 6 for 4. So you're really getting some value out of it. And I've removed some pretty hefty cards with this. Once you start locking things, let's say your opponent has a lot of engine pieces or cards that have orders. You lock 1, you lock 2, you lock 3, and suddenly he puts more and he's just overwhelming you. This comes down and can do 5 damage, 6 damage once the whole board is locked down. So it's extra insurance. I like it. At 4 provision, I've had a lot of mileage out of this. And the last one in the cheap slots would be the Nazca Sergeant. Most cards that we have play a deploy ability, which is fantastic. Because every time you play a deploy ability, you boost this bad boy by 1. So you play 1, 2, 3, and already you're getting some good return on the 4 cost. Again, you want to, if you're doing this in conjunction with your Magni division, make sure that your Magni's on the ranged row because a lot of our cards will have effects on the deploy row. So Alba Armored Cavalry is where we start getting funky with our control elements. Easy. Deploy on the melee row, lock an enemy unit. Easy said than done. 5 provision, 3 body. What you're doing here is you're not necessarily making a tempo play. You're just sort of halting your opponent's strategy. I like it. Fits the theme of this Nilfgaard control Witcher. Nilfgaard Knight. Now people are saying, what does this really do? It's 6 strength, which is great. Boost an enemy by 2. So really it's 4 strength for 5 provision. Now what this does is twofold. So it slams down a 6 body, which is fine, and could eat an Igni on a row where your Witchers are boosted or whatever. Now, that's not necessarily where you want to be going with this as sort of Witcher protection or Igni protection, definitely not. But at the same time, it does offer a big body for decks that deal with things like if you have the biggest unit on the board, blah, blah, blah. But boosting an enemy will get you some return, and I'll tell you why. Because we are also playing with this beautiful bastard named Master of Disguise. Now, what Master of Disguise does is he basically just swaps strengths with something. So let's say they throw down a 13-pointer. If you can put down Master of Disguise, and then next turn, because he doesn't have Zeal, but on the next turn you swap strength, that is a huge freaking play. So if your opponent has something big, and you get card advantage with Siri Dash or whatnot, you put him down next, and you throw him down, and on the turn after that, you play your you play your Nilfgaardian Knight to boost the enemy unit and then swap strengths. So technically it's an extra boost on your side. So really this could be an 8-point bronze card. Easy peasy, no problem. I've had that combo go off many times. It's very awesome. You protect it with you can always protect it with Avalok to make that play happen. And the point value on that card is great. Now 8 provision is huge, but the return on it is enormous as well, because I've had 12, 13, 14 point swings with this card, no problem, and it's been really fantastic. All right, now the last cards that sort of sum up this entire deck is going to be more in the control element. Bomb Heaver, easy, 6 provision, 4 strength. Not all that fantastic, but destroying enemy artifacts. Everybody's playing with the spears and the shields because they're just there. Sea Hill is also sort of popping up here and there, but those decks are just pains in the ass, and you can't interact with them. They don't really represent any points for your opponent, but at the same time, you can't lock them. You can't do anything. So what these do is sort of keep that quelled and dealt with for the time being. Now, I kind of was not suspecting so much artifact presence in the game, but there's tons. I always thought there'd be maybe one or two big ones, but now a lot of people are playing the bronze artifacts in droves, and it's really annoying. But the good news is that when you get these guys going, they will shut that down real nice. And finally, Viper Witchers. They're Witchers, so they get the benefit of Trial of the Grasses. They get the benefit of getting boosted by Vesemir, but at the same time, reveal the top card from your opponent's deck and banish it. The amount of times you sort of roll this, it's never a bad time to do this. Obviously, round 3 you don't want to play it, but if you're doing a throwaway round 3, go ahead, toss it down there, and ruin your opponent's draws next turn. You might actually hit the jackpot and get rid of some really important stuff, which is fantastic. I've tossed out Witchers with this. I've crushed Witchers out of my opponent's deck, which breaks up their trio play. You get really lucky with this card every now and then. Otherwise, you're really just banishing a card. 6 provision for 4, not the worst thing in the world, but boost it with Vesemir, 5 points, sounds good, and you're crushing something your opponent might need. So it's great, and it's not discarded, it's banished. It's gone. They can't res it, they can't do anything with it. So here's the deck in its totality. Basically, your finishers would be Master of Disguise. You want to play Siri Dash round 3 if you can, with 5 cards left in hand to get that extra piece. Master of Disguise or your three Witchers here are pretty much how you're going to blow this away, with Jan Calvet as your leader, offering you the option of getting some extra tempo. I use him a little bit more liberally now these days in order to sort of fish out locks if I really, really need them, or to fish out cards that I desperately need in order to win a round and not get 2-0'd. But I try to save him as much as possible in order to get myself an effective round 3. But he comes in handy more than often and adds some extra tempo. I've tried this deck with Usurper. I've found that I need, oftentimes I really need the extra tempo, or I need the mulligans that come with it. So I'm pretty pleased with this deck. I had a good time with it on the first day in. But yeah, hopefully you guys have the same success that I had with this. And if you have any questions, feel free, follow me on Twitter and we can talk about it, no big deal. But here it is, ladies and gentlemen, a first rendition of Flake playing some Nilfgaard. Not quite monsters, even though I have the monsters border up here, but regardless, hope you guys have a good time with this deck. And there she is. So there it is, there's the Witcher deck, and like I said, I had a lot of fun playing it. It's not just a matter of just slamming down win percentage. I like to play decks that interact with my opponent and could frustrate them. This is a very frustrating deck to play against, and it's had some success against decks like Aridin Immune and Great Swords and whatnot. It's kind of a shutdown deck with some good point potential. And those Master of Disguises are just disgusting. I've had so much fun with them. Yeah, so for Team Rankstar, I am Flake, and I am very, very happy to give you another deck list in the future. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to follow me on Twitter @WatchFlake, or you can go ahead and follow me on Twitch as well, where I stream these decks that I play, and obviously. But you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/WatchFlake. And as always, be kind to one another, and I will talk to you very soon. Adios.